Let me give you a little preamble, and then we'll open this up for questions because we want to get right to it. We're running a little late. Western leaders realize their own future is threatened by Russian aggression, but they fail to do enough. Lack of credible long-term commitments and restrictions for arms risk defeat in Ukraine, but also in the big picture, in arms production in the West, and it's losing. Can it not match Russia, Iran, North Korea, and China as the arsenal of autocracy? Will U.S. President Trump's pressure on NATO allies to increase spending help resolve the situation? Many claim that he was unprecedentedly successful in pushing NATO members to get closer to their 2% goal in terms of defense spending in his first term, which is still way too low in my view. Will he now achieve something close to 5%? Because he is talking that up. And is that a good goal? So with that, I'd just like to introduce our distinguished guests. Now, if I mispronounce the name, just tell me, okay, please. Margus Tsahkna. Did I say that right?
No.
By the way, I can barely speak English.
It took a couple of years for Estonians as well to pronounce the name. It's Tsahkna. Tsahkna. It's okay, let's just move on with this. Margus is okay.
Margus is okay.
Yeah. I'm going to call you Margus. Okay.
Yeah.
Moritz.
Yep.
Schularick. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
How do you say it?
Better than Schularick.
Schularick.
Yeah. Charlie, you better don't try mine one.
Now, this one. I'm going to get killed on this one. Oleksandr Kamyshin. I got it. Give me a hand.
Maybe you can say Ukrzaliznytsia. Just try it. I'm joking, okay.
By the way, they have me next, Charlie Gasparino. I can say that name. And I'm sorry, they don't have you down.
Yeah, Oleg Rogynskyy.
All right, or thank you for joining us. I'd like to ask somebody here, give us the dimensions, and I'll leave it up to whoever thinks he's right, he's best at this, of the Ukraine military arsenal. What are we looking at right now?
Should I start?
You're good enough. You're Ukrainian.
Just imagine we've got a guy in the room who positions himself as the futurist. He says, I'm speaking about the future. And I know he's been working on the strategy Ukraine 2030, right, Andrei? If at some point, that was like 5 years ago, right? If at some point you've been working on this strategy, someone would say that at some point Ukraine will become the powerhouse for the military production, the place where you can produce pretty anything that flies, goes on the land, goes on the sea, but kills Russians. Would you put it in the strategy?
It wasn't become a priority for the state. You're absolutely right that we didn't imagine that it should be Ukrainian breakthrough.
So, Charlie, when we started reshaping the industry, our philosophy was to build the arsenal of the free world. You know, there was a guy who was building the arsenal of democracy over the ocean from us. And we strongly believe that Ukraine becomes the arsenal of the free world because we've learned how to produce all types of those things that fly to Moscow and kill Russians. And that starts from ammunition, follows with armored vehicles, follows with all types of drones. You know, aerial ones, and you've heard much about sea drones, but there is still great story with land systems, unmanned land systems. This is the next big thing. And we learned how we can produce all types of that in quantities you would never imagine. So that's the current position where we are with the industry.
How much of the GDP do you guys spend on military?
It's hard to say. We spend the whole budget we have on the war. Like we collect $40 billion a year in taxes, and we spend all that money on the military things. 70% of that goes into salaries, and the rest goes into all types of procurement, from fuel to uniform and to military production. So actually, it's hard to say, but we invest 100% of our GDP into the industry.
This not small, but smallish country in the middle of Europe is shouldering democracy, is the one country that's standing between, domination by a tyrant and it's Ukraine. Why is that? And I'd like to ask you that because this is your field of expertise. Why are the Germans allowing this? Is this the stain of World War II just still playing out here?
So I think you're totally right. This is the role. This is what Ukrainians are doing right now. They are the bastion of democracy and freedom in Europe in this terrible war. It's not that Western Europe and the EU and the US have not supported Ukraine. I think that's true, but it's equally true that the support and the support in terms of its economic size relative to what we could do. That's true for Germany. To some extent, that's even true for the US. I would take the Baltic countries out and some of the Scandinavians who have really done a lot. So at the Kiel Institute, we provide the Ukraine support tracker, where since the beginning of the war, we've measured very clearly what contributions, what military, what humanitarian aid has gone to Ukraine. And I think I actually happen to know that the numbers for the US, for example, in Germany relative to GDP aren't that different. We have, on an annual basis, given about 0.15% of our GDP in support to Ukraine. That is not much. Right now in my country, in Germany, there's a big debate about a tranche of 3 billion in military aid that's supposed to go to Ukraine, and Chancellor Scholz is blocking it right now. This is the equivalent of 0.009% of German GDP. Just to give you an idea about the actual economic size, it wasn't much. And if you think about the first Gulf War, 1991, Helmut Kohl, the then German Chancellor, wrote a check to the Allied coalition.
Absolutely.
Germany did not participate. He wrote a check, and there was close to 1% of German GDP, just like that. That is, and we compare that to 0.15% of GDP that we have done on average in the past 2.5 or almost 3 years now. So why is that? I think there are two main issues. One is there is the understanding that this is also Europe's war, that this is our fight for freedom is not there, and combined with that, the logic of deterrence is very underdeveloped. I think Germany, like probably very few other countries, has really embraced the fall of the Berlin Wall, the end of the Cold War, with, welcomed the end of history in a way, and said this is it. We want to have, and we believe and almost wish that world to be true, in which we could have good relations with Russia. And the second point is, and I think that's true everywhere, is that budgets are tight. Yeah. Public debt is high. Especially in Europe, and we have very generous, low growth and very generous welfare systems that make these trade-offs really hard for parts of the population. And I think so reinvigorating growth is part of strengthening Europe, and an important part.
From a historical standpoint, I mean, Germany had a tradition of a great military, used for evil means, particularly in World War II. But whatever happened to the Prussian generals? My uncle, if you want to answer this, feel free.
Me.
Or anybody. My uncle fought in World War II, fought in a lot of bloody battles in the Battle of the Bulge, took back a lot of souvenirs, was very proud of his work there, trust me, on this. But always heard about the Prussian generals, Rommel. Whatever happened to that tradition? Is it gone? Did they kill it off in denazification?
It is a difficult tradition to stand in. I think the country, the society after that, the horrors of World War II and the horrors the Germans have done, had to have the pacifistic underbelly. And it's always had that, even if you remember late 70s, the discussion about sort of rearmament and the nuclear warhead stationed on German territory. It didn't split society. In the end, there was a very firm Western commitment. But now, after reunification, the eastern part joined, and it's it's the part that was under Russian occupation since World War II that is now most sort of divided, actually, on the support for Ukraine. So there are interesting shifts that have happened in the country. But I think overall, you're right. It's very difficult for a German politician and also for German military to look back to that military tradition and say, this is where we want to pick up again. So it has to be a very sort of civil way of doing wars, which is a difficult thing to do.
So if you think of yin and yang of this sort of conversation, it would be Germany versus Estonia, correct? What
we
prompted
have
you
we have a
guys?
past with Germany as well, but we get with a very, very decent way. But somehow I totally understand as well what is our colleague is saying here as well. But even the decision to start to support the third country who is at war, for German people, I think it was a big change, to be honest. And Germany has supported nominally the second level after the US, so we cannot say that Germany has not done anything. So, but from our perspective, of course, we are solidar with the Ukraine people, and also we have had the past together. The case is psychological, I think, much more. It's not about money. Estonia has put in close to the 2% of GDP support to Ukraine, which makes us, that the GDP per capita support the number one nation in the world, but it's not the case. It's a nominal value is important as well. But GDP figure is honest. GDP figures measures actually the pressure to your economy and society. And at the same time, we announced yesterday that we will increase our defense spendings up to 5%. We can do it. We collect more taxes. We call it defense tax. And our people are actually criticizing us as politicians that we are not doing more.
What's your debt levels there?
It's like 18%, 18.
Of GDP?
Yes. So
you want to weigh in on this too?
So we can teach. We're cutting heavily. So I'm cutting crocodile actually. But the case, what I wanted to say is that we remember as a Baltics and Polish, and so we still remember how was it to live without freedom. And we have all the stories in our families about the same atrocities, what is happening right now in Ukraine. So this is a very important thing. I think that many other nations in Europe as well, they don't know they don't remember that feeling, because freedom is granted. Actually, it is not. The second thing is that about fear. Putin is playing with fear. As well Stalin did, as well Hitler did, and all the dictatorship, they are playing with fear. We are not fearing. Ukrainians are not fearing. So it's impossible to play with us. We fight back because we know the price, and cynically said it's the most cheapest way to support Ukraine, by economically and everything. So we call that Ukrainians are fighting not only for themselves, not for us, but instead of us. I saw as a defense minister 2016-17, 120,000 troops ready to go within 48 hours the other side of our border. So these troops are not existing literally. They've sent to Ukraine and you have killed them all. So instead of us, you did it. So for us, it's logical that we support you. But there is a fear. What if Putin will lose? It's like the constant fear from the Western part. What will happen if Putin loses?
They talk about it in the US on every podcast.
So, and
right
I
now.
remember, and we remember as well, the same fear was there about what if Soviet Union will collapse. And you remember that definitely.
Yep.
And we were told as well that maybe, it's not maybe the right time to have a full independence and restoration. Maybe, this autonomy is a good thing as well. Don't piss off Gorbachev, he's a good guy. So the fear is the main psychological reason, and fear of escalation, which will never happen that Putin will use the nuke. So instead of this, if we would have given everything what we have gained for now within 3 years for the western part of the world, we would have given it within the first war year. I think that Ukrainians would have been done already. And as well the promises. I can't imagine and I cannot understand even the calculations that we have been promising, and we made an agreement for the next 4 years that 0.25% of GDP we give annually, military support, what Ukrainians are needing. If all allies are doing the same thing, we would have had like 120 billion military support per year. Enough to deal with Russia. So, and because of this fear, I think that these kind of political decisions, they have not made.
Interesting.
So,
and
this final thing,
Yep.
I don't buy the talks that our budget is tense and economically we are not doing well. GDP figure is honest. GDP figure is honest. We have pensioners as well. We have social system. We have education system. It's a question about how much you value your freedom and how much you exactly understand that you need to fight for. You need to prepare for that as well.
Oleg, I'd like to bring you in here. Isn't the fear not that Putin will lose, worried that he's going to lose, is that when he's losing, he starts using nuclear weapons. I mean, is that, I hear, this is just, it's not me saying it, it's the American public saying this. It's the Tucker Carlsons, it's the people that do have President Trump's ear, not totally, but they do.
Well, I mean, the fear is that he will use nuclear weapons. However, I'm sure, and we can expect that Ukrainian government has thought of that, and there is not a single concentration of military assets in one place that would justify the use of that. The nuclear deterrence doctrine is a pretty well-known thing at this point. But what I wanted to highlight that is not obvious to United States and many other allied countries is that what's happening in Ukraine right now, and I come from software world, so I've seen how software became much cheaper with cloud. What's happening right now is that defensive technologies that are being developed are becoming a lot cheaper. We're talking about AOFPV drones. We're talking about all the swarm technology that's being invested in right now, etc. Ground vehicles, unmanned ground vehicles. What people don't realize is that the cost of defensive technologies is a much better deterrent than nukes. If it is 100 times more expensive to attack the country, you will think 100 times before you do that. And so what's happening in Ukraine is, in some way, a prevention of World War III if the technology that's being developed right now in terms of drones, etc., proliferates into defensive posture.
I guess that's a good segue into drones. I had this conversation earlier today. We're all talking about a negotiated peace and what Ukraine would accept, would Putin accept it. I guess my point to the panel is, are we rushing too fast into that? We only hear the bad news on the sort of development of where the war stands, but Ukraine is making gains with the use of drones. Am I missing something, or is this a game changer? I guess. Well, Alexandra, what do you think? You. Sorry to butcher your name again.
Last year, exactly at this panel, I announced that our drone, long-range drone, reached St. Petersburg with over 12,500 kilometers behind it. That was in all news next day. Now we hit them every day, and it's not in the news anymore because everyone gets used that we've got long-range capabilities that we can use deep inside Russia. In my belief, it's impossible to win the war without asymmetric war we wage against them deep inside Russia. And that's something we've been asking from the whole world, from US with ATACMS, from European countries, whether we can use their long-range capabilities inside Russia. And for years, we've been hearing no. And with things we make in Ukraine, we can make it without asking. And that's about long-range things. Speaking about short-range things, again, never enough ammunition. And you know that we've been waiting for 1 million rounds from Europe much longer than Russia was waiting from North Korea. North Korea just delivering millions of rounds and without any long discussions. And FPV drones became some kind of a saving line for us with the lack of ammunition. So finally, that's the way how we reinvented the whole war. We've got mortars, we've got mortar drones, we've got artillery drones, we've got missiles, we've got rocket drones. And now we are stepping into the stage where we've got land systems, where we've got AI behind aerial drones. We've got already resolved the issue with auto-targeting. We've been fighting on the swarm of drones, and that's something that is going to become the game changer, in my belief. Land drones and the swarm. But definitely, at some point, you've heard that we began this war as the Second World War. Then it became the Second World War with the drones. Now it becomes more and more the war of drones. So yes, it's a game changer. And inside one big game changer, there are smaller game changers. AI is one of them, and land system is one of them.
Margus, are we rushing into this negotiation? I mean, listen, everybody wants this to end and end in the right way. but you want to end when you kind of when you're in a position of power. Obviously, are we ending this? I mean, is there a chance where Ukraine can get the upper hand with the use of technology and drones, where we can then negotiate a better peace, essentially?
Should we swap persona? Is it a question for me?
Yes, and I can open it up.
So I do. Let me put my economist hat on again. It's a game. No, it's game theory. And I think it's very clear that a window for true negotiations opens up only if and when Putin understands that there's no chance he can win this war militarily. I think that's the number one, and that's what every Cold War game theory from that.
And he still thinks he can.
I think he still counts on Europeans being too weak to really defend, on Ukrainians, which I don't believe, at some point being too tired of the war,
and the US
becoming a little bit uncertain as a supporter. And I think this is something we should not forget. There is someone else behind Russia, and that's China. And China could at any given moment step up its support. There is support, and we know about that. But obviously, I would say like dictatorships have a longer horizon. They don't think about in election cycles. And I think for sure that the only way, the way Putin thinks about this is that there's still a chance that this, coalition, sometimes strong, sometimes less strong, in supporting Ukraine will collapse. And he thinks like there's a long-term run that, with the potential help of China, Russia can win. So step number one is for Europe, but also for the US and for the new administration, is make clear that there is no way it's ever possible that Russia wins this war militarily. And Putin's generals have to go back to him and say, Mr. Putin, we cannot win this war. We cannot. It's impossible. And then there's a chance to talk, and I would say that always to talk on Ukrainian terms. In the end, it has to be the Ukrainians who say what they're willing to trade for peace at this point, and I guess there will be some negotiation. And it's also Ukrainians to say, like, maybe if you support us with this weapon system, with more money, it can be us who send the signal to Putin that you can't win this. So I think that's step number one. And then number two is, I think you want to, from a Western perspective, and that's my perspective. I'm not here to lecture Ukraine. I think you want to think very well about what it would cost us as the West if Ukraine loses, because the costs of that are much, much larger. I mean, really. Like orders of magnitudes larger in terms of additional refugees, in terms of additionally to what we have to do anyways, to rearm and deter further Russian aggression. All of that, the trade, all the technology, all the linkages to Ukraine, all of that would be lost. And that's much more than, and I come back to that number, much more than the 0.1% of GDP that Germany currently, and other countries currently, devote to supporting Ukraine.
So you think, I'm just trying to sum up, it's in Ukraine's best interest not to negotiate now, to fight a little, to try to gain maybe a strategic edge? I was going to ask you.
No, please. I have a strong feeling about that.
Yes. I was going to ask you next, but I just wanted to sum up. Do I have your...
I was coming from...
From a game theory.
I think from the game theory point of view, I think this is the window, and I think this is the role of the West is to be so strong and bold in saying we're supporting Ukraine, that it's clear in Moscow that there is no military solution. We will not fade.
Just so you know, as an American, it's not my brothers and sisters that are being shot at and taking risking their lives and their limbs here. So it's easy for me to say, but from a game theory, I guess you would agree as well.
I mean, one sentence for you as an American, I think keeping that China angle in the back of your mind is a really, really important element.
Just so you know, from my standpoint, just from me, as come from a military family, when you talk about war, I think about it from the soldier's standpoint, because I've known people that came back from the Gulf War with no legs, and I know what it cost them psychologically. And so, but yes, from a purely strategic standpoint, it seems like Ukraine might have coming to get the edge, correct?
I totally agree with your analyze about that we are rushing into this kind of process is actually that Putin is not interested at all. And I think that the first
Well,
rule,
the West is kind of. I mean, the Americans
but
are.
to be honest, one thing I want to say very clearly, and I say it repeatedly everywhere, there cannot be even a discussion about the peace without Ukraine. So this is the main thing. Everybody is talking about the peace in Ukraine and peace process, but Ukraine must decide that. Our thing is to support Ukraine. So, and also the second thing is that cannot be a long-lasting peace in Europe without Europe. So we are building up actually the new security architecture for Europe. It's not only about the Ukraine. It's about us, it's about our region, it's about Europe. So, and we need to understand that as well.
But Ukrainians are dying in the
No,
context.
but the second thing I wanted to say as well. So the narrative is wrong. So everybody is saying that Ukraine is losing and so on. But be honest, instead of 6 days of special operation, Ukraine has been able to fight 3 years. There has not been any like strategic breakthrough from Russia militarily.
Yep.
And Black Sea is free, we can say almost. So, and in Kursk, you know, Russia was not able to kick back within the last couple of months. So don't spread this fake narrative. So we have very strong positions just to support Ukraine, to fight back, to have a stronger position, and totally agree that on military level it must be done first. And the third thing,
Sure, go for it.
is about the goal of Putin. So Putin has not changed the goal, and we are not able to change the goal. The goal was not to gain some more territories in Ukraine. It was not the goal at all. The goal was destroy Ukraine, and not only Ukraine, but you remember as well what Putin said about this, what he needs to get in 2022. It's about the NATO enlargement. It's about NATO, it's about Baltic states and Poland, it's about many, many other things. And these positions are still there. So till we are not changing the goal of Putin, how can we talk about any kind of peace processes? Or we are going to repeat so-called Minsk processes without any working security guarantees. And this is a threat for us as well. It's not only about Ukraine, it's about Europe.
So, Oleg, I put the question to you. Are we rushing, is the West pushing this negotiated peace too quickly? You know, one thing I did notice about Trump, and Jeff Sonnenfeld of Yale University brought this up, and it was an interesting question. So Russia sells its oil for like $40, produces at $40 a barrel. There's a break-even cost if, once it hits, it's $20 a barrel or $30 a barrel or something like that. So if we can take the price of oil up another $10 by producing more, that could really crush him. I mean, then whatever he does with selling oil, his currency is almost gone.
Yep.
So, I mean, what do you think of that theory? Does that make sense?
I mean, definitely economic pressure is palpable there, according to all the news. And not only that, and with the U.S. the new pragmatic government in place now, money definitely talks. And one piece that I don't think is visible and actually being discussed in the news in the US is everybody loves complaining about the cost-plus structure of US defense system, where you're spending 5-6% of your GDP, but if you were costing it not at cost-plus, it would probably be much less.
Yeah.
Ukraine is actually the live example of what it would look like if US was focusing on building systems that are cheap, effective, and plentiful. And there's a lot of lessons to learn there. China is doing that every day, all day long. And so from economic perspective, US not only could influence the bottom line, but also the top line of this war quite effectively, being pragmatic.
Why hasn't that message got to American leaders enough, that there is an economic rationale here? I mean, one of the things that I was always fascinated about, because I cover stocks, just so you know, I'm a business reporter when it really comes down to it, and I cover everything from M&A to the confluence between politics and finance, world affairs and finance, but I also cover technology and IPOs. And there was a time where Israeli tech IPOs were going through the roof, right? All of it came from the military. They built, their military is highly technologically advanced, and their private sector came out of that, and it helped the country is becoming an economic superpower because of that. Why hasn't Ukraine explained to the U.S. and at least particularly American lawmakers what's at stake here? I mean, you talk about a tech hub that's friendly to the U.S.
Yep.
This could be the place.
Nobody gets admiral chevrons for building drone boats. You get those for building air carriers. And so the economic incentives in the American system are really not aligned with cheap, fast, plentiful. And so from that perspective, there's also a bit of a pride in America. We have the best military and the best hardware. How could Ukrainians for $500 do something that does more damage?
Oh, I don't believe that.
We would rather build $20 million Reaper drones and fly them.
We take so much stuff from China, we'll take it from Ukraine.
I can add.
Okay.
Your defense budget for last year was $850 billion. With dozens of billions you spent in Ukraine, you can reshuffle your 850. Russian defense budget was 112.
112 billion?
Yeah, but their purchasing power is much higher than of 850. And I'm not even trying to sum up Russian and Chinese, because that would be scary.
Interesting. Well, we are behind on that. You want to weigh in?
Look, I think it's a very good point. It's the point why we've introduced the price cap, is to basically make sure that the revenues are capped. We haven't been, and that was part of I remember very early on in summer 22, the discussions actually with the Treasury in Washington. It was part of the Biden administration's approach that we don't want to sanction Russian oil exports because of the implications for world market oil prices. So by that logic, if you reverse that logic and drill baby drill expands and maybe a phone call to the Saudis bring the oil price down, I think the world economy would like it.
It was one of the dumbest geopolitical moves Joe Biden did, and he's famous for him. He basically imposed environmental standards on our drilling while he was saying let's not sanction Russia. I mean, it's insane.
So in that sense, reversing that wrong logic that the former administration had, I think anything that brings down the oil price, anything that cuts Russian oil revenues, be it through sanctions on the shadow tanker fleet, be it through lowering the price cap, or being through just expanding supply and calling on some friends in Saudi Arabia to do the same, so that the oil price goes down, would benefit American consumers, European economies, and it would hurt Putin, and that's a good idea.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I would like to add that Ukraine is helping the Western world with sanctioning Russian oil, because when we've seen that sanctions don't work perfectly, we joined the game and we started hitting the refineries. So sanctions work much better when we work together.
Well, how bad is I agree. You're right there, Estonia. How bad is the Russian economy? I mean, are they... Tucker Carlson went there, my friend, and said, well, the shelves are filled, but actually they looked empty. But that's a whole... When he went to the supermarket. I mean, is it a basket case right now?
The case is that we have been one of the running power about the sanctions against Russia, and we have proposed, together with the Baltics and many other countries as well, the total trade embargo in the EU, but it's impossible, sorry to say. And also these sanctions...
People aren't starving there, obviously.
Actually, they're not starving somehow, I don't know, but the expectations for living standards, they're different. And of course, this is the Russian story. And also, be honest, there is no freedom to speak and think about, we have discussions about the pensions and whatever. In Russia, probably you're happy if you're alive. So it's a totally different level. The second thing is that Putin has turned all the economy based on the war. It's a war economy. And this is one argument as well, why for him it is hard to stop, because he has turned all the society, all the economy into a war mode. And also terror. I think that he has used more and more terror against its own people. And can you imagine that...
Western journalists, anybody that's over there...
It's hard to get out from this circle, because he's not standing for Russian people and Russia, he's standing for his personal legacy. Unfortunately, we have this kind of stories every other 70 years in Europe, that we have some personalities and dictators. So, and he knows very well that he's fighting for his life. He cannot retire from Kremlin. Only Khrushchev had this opportunity. And all the other guys, they were, carried out from the Kremlin. So this is a mentality as well. It's hard to understand from Western part of the world. So this is not rational behavior. This is personal case. and exactly as Stalin had. And even when Stalin, after the Second World War, he had a more, the wider plans about Europe to conquest all of that. So he needed to turn back the troops from Europe. And he needed like millions of lives to control using terror, to stabilize even this Soviet Union at this time. So actually Putin is facing the same things. Putin is living in a fear of losing the power. So, and for him it's a question of life and death. So that's the reason as well we need to support Ukraine, because we are buying too easily based on our wishful thinking that business as usual can turn back, that we're buying these narratives that he's strong, he's stronger than ever. Maybe he is, but also the crash can come very easily. So
He could be a paper tiger.
yeah, as we saw in Syria. Sorry, different cases, but this kind of dictatorship, they're like breaking.
There's a
like
tipping
this.
point. I like to throw a little bit of a curveball here because we can talk about facts and figures and GDP and how much we're given to militaries, but a lot of this turns on the guys on the ground. People have dirt on their boots, lost lives and friends. They're right there. And I'd like to ask you, would you like to comment?
Доброго дня. Мене звуть Дмитро Фінашин.
Hi, I am Dmitro Finashin. I am a military serviceman. On the 1st of January, I was relieved from my military service because I've got wounded.
На рахунок технологій.
As far as technologies are concerned, yes, we are developing. Yes, this changes everything in the defense doctrine, and most of the technologies that are being issued from the conveyor are being revamped in garages and other places. They have to be protected from drones, otherwise this vehicle or this equipment will be destroyed as soon as it is out of the production line and will not be able even to reach the front line. Every person in the world, all the world should watch how the war is being waged in Ukraine, and you have to prepare to defend yourself. You have to protect your technologies, your vehicles. You have to protect your strategic objects. Just like we see that this is quite cheap and quite easy to destroy some important infrastructure. What actually you wanted to ask about
Ask me.
the feelings?
Go ahead, ask me.
No,
Вас цікавить більше? Запитайте, що би ви хотіли більше розговорити.
what would you like to hear in a more unfolded way about technology or my feelings and my attitude?
Here's what I'd like to hear. How confident is the typical Ukrainian soldier? I mean, that means a lot.
Український воїн впевнений в тому,
A Ukrainian soldier is confident that he or she has no other choice than to fight to the end. Regrettably,
не впевнений, чи зможе він дожити.
not everyone is sure that they will be able to live until tomorrow.
Мусимо робити свою роботу.
However, we have to continue with our work because there's no one to stand instead of us. No one has said, we're going to replace you here. And by the way, even the desire to help us is rather feeble. So I would not fear nuclear arms. Okay, he will use it. And what's further? This is the end for everyone. So why should we be afraid of this? They cannot destroy Ukraine altogether at the moment. Yes, they are moving forward slowly, but their position is not as good as it may seem. We really have a disastrous lack of resources. If we had active support, this would look in a different way, but we should not sit and talk about whether it's worth being scared by Putin. No, we shouldn't be scared, because if there's an alliance, if there's force and strength gathered together, we don't have to be afraid of him. Let's say that in the post-Soviet space, he's a hooligan who will always look for a weaker person to attack and defend this person. Let's be unified, united, and let's once and for all close this matter.
You know, I heard someone smarter than me say that if there was one person that created a unified solidarity in in Ukraine, it was Vladimir Putin. In a way, he put the country together in ways that it really never has been. And do you agree with that? In a perverse way?
Yeah, in a perverse way, if I can say that it's really a perverse way to say that the best salesman of the NATO and EU enlargement has been Putin. And really, without Putin, I think that the enlargement processes of NATO and also EU would have been under consideration. And the best proof of that is actually that the Swedish people decided to join NATO after more than 200 years of neutrality. So, and Finnish, for us, it was clear that it will happen under the conditions because they have like 1,300 kilometers to the common border and the history, but the Swedish people. So you're right, perversely, that Putin has united the Ukrainians, has united West. So, but
not enough for the West.
The question is now the price.
Enough yet, yeah.
Now the question is about the price, and it's up to us, not about to Putin.
Well, that's what I would ask Alexandria. If you were sitting here with Mr. Rubio, what would you tell him to spend some money on to help Ukraine? Be specific if you can.
I would tell the same I told to Kajsa Ollongren a year ago when she was the Minister of Defense of Netherlands, when she said, what I can do else for you after delivering jets and so on. I said, listen, we've got a capable industry and we can produce much more than we can fund. If you could, please, fund some of those capabilities. She said, I will think about that. Next time she was coming to Ukraine, she texted me that I would be coming on 9th. And I said, I'm leaving on 9th. She said, I have to meet you. I need you. So we agreed to meet at the train station in the middle of Ukraine at 1 o'clock in the night for 20 minutes. That's where she said, I'll make it. And she made it. She visited our factories. She said, I'll make it. So when we meet with the new administration, I'm sure that we will show them the value, the assets we have. Things that you probably will need in the Indo-Pacific and somewhere else. And we learned how we can produce it. Yes, now it helps make Russia small again. But maybe you will need it somewhere else. So we are not just going to ask for help. We are offering things we've learned how we can produce. It's an asset.
Oleg.
As we heard directly from the front lines just now, most of the hardware that is being produced, besides being of older design, is not really relevant for modern warfare. What that means is that pretty much everything in the Western arsenal has to be rebuilt from scratch for the modern warfare. There's a massive business opportunity here that Mr. Rubio should be considering for the United States, not only learning from Ukraine, but all of the West needs to rearm to 2025. They're still using 7 Stingers from the 70s.
I just saw Larry Fink from BlackRock. He's your financial advisor, or he's Ukraine's financial advisor. I guess BlackRock is one. The other one is J.P. Morgan, and I know Jamie Dimon's running around here. Why isn't someone telling him that? Or are they? I mean, because listen, people think of Larry Fink as some sort of a globalist ESG guy. He's actually friends with Trump. He can call up Trump. Jamie Dimon has access to Trump. I mean, why is and Mary Erdos, who's the point person on Ukraine, can make that call. Vince Lapadula, another person. Vince is a friend of mine. Vince was the guy, I believe, who gave President Zelensky the New England Patriots uniform, sure, last Davos, or around that time. Why isn't someone telling them to, pass on the word?
Told to Mary yesterday, told to Philip today.
You talked to Larry today. Good for you. What'd you tell him? Can I write about this?
Like Philip Hildebrand, who is actually the CEO, was actually here in this house an hour ago, and definitely we are quite vocal. So we're using every single mean we can, every single channel we can to deliver the message. We're not just asking for help. we're coming with assets, military capabilities and lessons learned in this war, defense industry. That's something that would be useful for the US, new administration, and other nations as well.
We got, on my clock, 6 minutes left. That says 10, but I think that's wrong. And I know, Victor, you're on a tight schedule, so we'll do the 6 minutes. Perfect. Okay, let's go around here. How much money does what does the West need to do to help to win the war? Essentially, win it enough that there will be a negotiated peace on Ukraine's terms.
Not to be afraid, feel fear. But we don't have to figure out something new. I'm really pissed off about that. We have new meetings and people thinking about something new. Let's do exactly what Ukrainians are asking. That is a plan, expertise. That's it, and we have all the money in the world, actually. Be honest, the only thing what we have, actually, is money, lots of money. So let's do and execute what the Ukrainian partners are asking, and this kind of momentum will come when Putin is going to change his goal, and there's a momentum to have a just and long-lasting peace. And the second thing, let's not be afraid about NATO membership. We need Ukraine in NATO as much as Ukraine needs NATO. Because can you imagine, of course, 1 million at least troops under the arms and the expertise about fighting back.
I want to get a mic in Igor Ferzov's hand. Can I do that? He's the chief sergeant of the UAV attack company, 109 Territorial Defense Brigade. Okay, he's a war hero. I like to hear from you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here.
Well, what do we need to do? I mean, what would your advice be to the West to put Ukraine in a strong position to negotiate?
Okay, from the very beginning of the discussion, I've been listening very intently and attentively, and I would be a Ukrainian warrior who would finally answer the question whether we are confident that we are going to win and whether we have faith in our victory. We can lose. We might lose. And we feel it at the front line. We are the first to have this fear of losing the war, and we are much more fearsome than people who live in Kiev or in Lviv. And the next Davos conference might be a nightmare for Europe. It might be not about economy, but about new world order. If Ukraine loses and Russian troops are in Kiev or in Lviv on the Polish border. So to us, unfortunately, that's the reality, and we are fully aware of that. At the same time, having said that, we understand that Ukraine can win. 5 days ago, I was wearing these boots on the positions in Donetsk region, and I, as no one else, understand the mood and the sentiment of our soldiers. And they know that we can both lose and win, but they also are certain that if we have 10 times as many drones, we can fight and win thanks to the drones. There would be no fruitful negotiations while the front line is dynamic when it is moving. We have to stabilize the front line, we have to defeat the enemy, and we thus can win. One thing that I would like to tell you as well, when I joined the drone company, I first started with chairing the crew of drone operators. It seems very simple. You just operate the drone, but there's also EOD crew that should accompany you. You have to take off the safety pin so that the drone starts flying. And nobody believed me that. Now we hear from everyone. Drones, UAVs, unmanned platforms. But when back in 2022, we said to our commanders that this thing can destroy a tank. Nobody believed us. See? So when you approach the drone, you should be brave to remove this safety pin because it can explode. It can blast. And I feel that the world, the West, lacks this courage to remove this safety pin and have its take on Ukraine so that we are strong to win.
Excellent. Now that is absolutely true. We have, like, we're running on borrowed time. Quickly, what would you tell the West to do?
I mean, my expertise is in economics, so focus on the economy. The Russian economy is not as strong as it seems. Inflation is in the double digits, interest rates above 20%. If we cut off more oil, the resources for the war dwindle. Have a really credible economic deterrence, and at the same time support the Ukrainians, give unconditional commitment to Ukrainian defense, and, as you said, create a credible scenario.
Push it over the cliff.
No, but also, I mean, we need to think about the security guarantees for Ukraine.
But you only can do that when you're in a good position to bargain.
Exactly.
What do you think?
Make Russia small again. Help Ukraine build itself
there's a hat.
as
I think there's a hat
Israel.
making here. That's what you got to do. Give Trump a hat. Make Russia small again. It doesn't work as good as MAGA, but
I will give it to you, and you give it to him.
I will.
Agreed.
What do you think? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Scale up the Danish model. The Danish are giving cash to produce armaments in Ukraine and scale it up.
Ah, interesting.
Ukrainians know how to do it. They have plenty of capacity and ingenuity. Give them money, they'll build it.
Like I said, we're running on borrowed time. Thank you. I will say this, and I said this at the panel yesterday just because I cover this from an econ standpoint. When this thing is over, and it'll end someday, and hopefully, and it's going to end on the right terms, Ukraine is going to be the next Silicon Valley, in my view. You got resilient people, smart people. A lot of them speak English, which is great for international trade. The resilience, particularly, this place is going to take off, and let's just hope this thing ends and soon, and ends on the right terms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.